On December 14, 2012, 20-year-old Adam Lanza killed 20 first graders and 6 educators at the Newtown, Connecticut elementary school. Lanza fatally shot his mother at their home before going to the school, killed himself as police moved in. One of those children killed during that horrific shooting was little Emilie Parker, age 6. Her father, Robbie Parker, is with us today. Welcome, Robbie. Thanks for sharing your story with us on the Lean to the Left podcast.
Good morning. No, I appreciate you having me here. Thank you.
Hey, I can't imagine how you and your family have been able to cope with this horrible tragedy. Can you share your story about what happened that day?
Yeah, on that day in particular it was one of those typical started out about the same as any other day, except for in our house, Emily had planned this toy drive. She had involved her sisters in getting a bunch of toys that she wanted to donate. It was right before Christmas. And so there was a lot of buzz and excitement in the house because that afternoon, it was the last day of school before Christmas break, and the plan was to kick off the Christmas season. They were going to take the box to the donation center. And
Mhm.
I was pretty sad because I was going to miss it because I was going to be at work. But everybody was really excited about it. And I'd woken up early and was going to get ready for work and noticed that Emily was awake. And so I spent a few minutes with her, which I usually didn't get that kind of a time with her before I left.
Mhm.
And so it was a special morning to get that moment with her and before I went to work and left the house full of excitement. And it was a
Oh,
joyful morning, actually, before we
wow.
found out what was going to happen.
My goodness gracious. So then what happened?
I was at work. I work in the newborn intensive care unit. And so I was rounding on our patients, and I got a voicemail saying that all the schools in Newtown had been placed on lockdown because of a reported shooting at one of the schools.
Mhm.
And that was the end of the message. That was the cliffhanger message. Time went on and things started to progress. We realized that the shooting did happen at Emily's school. And when I was on the phone with Alyssa, she was really concerned because she knew that Emily's classroom was in that front hallway. And I was in a kind of a mode where it wasn't dawning on me that I needed to be concerned. At first, I thought it was a shooting at the high school or something. And then when we found out it was at Emily's school,
Mhm.
knowing that she was vulnerable and she was close to where the entrance was, that started to take a toll on us.
I gather it would. And so then you eventually went to the school, right?
Eventually, me being at the hospital, when there's a community disaster event like that, the hospital will go on lockdown.
Mhm.
And I wasn't able to leave the hospital right away. But over time, we had learned that some students that had been injured were taken to the hospital. So I spent some time trying to find out if Emily was there because my wife, Alyssa, she had gone to the school with our younger daughters, and she hadn't found Emily yet. They hadn't been reunited. So she asked me to stay at the hospital until we knew if Emily was either at the school and they were able to get reunified or if she had been taken to the hospital. So there was a couple of hours between me finding out about the shooting before I was actually able to make it over to where the school was, where they were doing the reunification process.
Yeah. Okay. So then you found out what happened.
Yeah, not immediately. So they had put everybody, there's a firehouse on the corner of the road that goes up to the elementary school.
Mhm.
And so they were sending parents that hadn't encountered their children yet into this conference room. And so
Okay.
by the time I made it into the conference room, right before I showed up, a state policeman had given an announcement, an update that they could confirm that 20 children had died, but they couldn't give any names, and they were still trying to account for all the children in the school, so they would come back later with an update. So another one of those moments where you get really horrible news with nothing really to do with it other than worry.
Oh my God. I don't know I don't know how you guys managed that at that time. And so eventually you found out what happened and you had to deal with the grief and the loss of your little girl.
Yeah,
And then this guy Alex Jones shows up the next day.
actually, I didn't know this until much later, but while
Okay.
we were sitting in the firehouse for those hours waiting to hear if Emily was a victim or if they just hadn't found Emily yet, trying our best to hold on to hope and deal with what all the crazy emotions that we were dealing with. At the very same time, Alex Jones was on his show already spouting that this was a false flag event, that this was a hoax, that the government uses mass shootings to as a way to take away your rights and to change the Second Amendment. So he was already sowing those seeds
Yeah.
before we had even found out that Emilie was a victim.
Oh my God, that's just incredible. You and your wife decided that you eventually to leave Connecticut, right?
Yeah,
And you
we
moved.
hadn't been there very long.
Okay.
And yeah, we were from out west. We had grown up in Utah. I lived in Texas and Utah and went to school in the Pacific Northwest. And Connecticut was a kind of an adventure for us. And we had lived there for about a year before the shooting, and then we
Okay.
stayed for about a year afterwards, and then we relocated back to the Pacific Northwest.
Why did you decide to do that?
Pictorial. We didn't have a lot of roots in Connecticut. We had my wife's cousin lived there. My brother was there going to school. The biggest thing was because of what Alex Jones and his message to his listeners, and especially the target that they put on me as being in cahoots with the government and to put on this con, right? And so the level of harassment and threats and things that we started to receive within days after the shooting, that only escalated as time went on, especially in that first year. And people knew where to find me, they knew where we were. And so I thought I was trying my best to protect my family. We were trying our best to grieve. Emily's sisters were, at the time that we moved, they were 4 and 5 years old. And so we wanted to get to a place where we had some autonomy for them, where they could live in a place where they weren't always known as that we were one of the families. And so the harassment that we were receiving was a major catalyst for us moving, besides a number of other things.
Harassment. What did they do?
Initially, some friends of ours, like my friends from high school that were still really close, they had started a memorial page on Facebook.
Mhm.
And the shooting was on Friday morning. By Sunday morning, conspiracists were already inundating Emilie's memorial page on Facebook,
Oh, shit.
spouting just hateful rhetoric and starting to just say a lot of awful things about her and about me. And
Uh,
then very quickly it turned violent. We started getting before we even buried Emilie, before her funeral, I had already received death threats. And this was really no joke, and it came on very fast, very quickly.
Holy mackerel. And said that contributed to your decision to move back to the Pacific Northwest. Did that hate follow you there?
Yeah, I was hoping that we could leave a lot behind
Yeah,
and focus on our own healing and
sure.
kind of recenter our family and ourselves. And
Hmm.
the Pacific Northwest, it was great. We moved back to an area where we had lived with Emilie, when our family was whole. So we have a lot of great memories here and
Hmm.
feel her here. But quickly we bought a house, and within months after relocating here, there's already videos on YouTube of people looking through public records about the purchase of my home, posting my address online, putting up the sale price, and they just were relentless. Me moving away or me doing whatever I did to try and protect ourselves never worked.
Incredible. You and your wife, eventually, you decided that you needed to stand up to Jones and you joined the lawsuit against him. What had been holding you back? Why didn't you do it right in the beginning?
Again, the reason that I ended up being a target was because right after the shooting, the media uh, focus on Sandy Hook and on the families was so intense, and we had media personnel coming to our house and knocking on our door. Again, the shooting was on Friday. By Saturday afternoon, we had become so inundated that I felt like I needed to get some space from the media. So I thought, if I give a statement, I could throw the media a bone, they will leave me alone, and we can focus on our grief. And so I ended up unknowingly, I just wanted to give this recorded statement that was going to be replayed, right?
Yeah.
I unknowingly ended up participating in this press conference that
Okay.
was going out live. And so
Right.
I was the first parent that had spoken out. I didn't know that it was live. I didn't know that it was going across the nation. But because I was the first parent that spoke out, I ended up being a very big target, right?
Sure.
And so because of that's why Alex Jones was able to focus on me, and he focused on mannerisms that I gave during that conference to prove that I was a crisis actor in cahoots with Obama and stuff. Me doing anything publicly, I did the sweetest thing in my mind to pay tribute to my daughter, and that got used to attack me. The more attacks that came, the idea of being out front, the idea of doing something directly against these people that had been the cause of so much harm and damage to our family, that was a really legit, scary threat. If you think about it, we just experienced the worst that somebody can do to another human being, right?
Right.
Adam Lanza didn't know who I was. He didn't know who Emilie was. He didn't hate me. He didn't have a reason to hate me. The people that follow Alex Jones, they knew who I was.
Mhm.
They know who I am. They know where I lived, and they had a reason to hate me. So
Mhm.
their threats are very legitimate in my eyes. So the idea
Right.
of fighting against them was the farthest thing from my mind. I didn't
Uh,
want to bring any more attention to my family.
sure, I understand that. So you eventually wrote a book about this experience. It's called A Father's Fight, Taking on Alex Jones and Reclaiming the Truth About Sandy Hook. How did you find the strength? How did you find the strength, Robbie, to do that?
That's given me a lot of credit to say
Okay.
that I have all the strength to be able to put that out there.
Did it, right?
I did. And throughout this whole process, it was always my experience was could be summed down into twofold. It was I really wanted to focus on grief. I really wanted to focus on healing for my family. Learning how to grieve in a healthy way was what I understood as the way that our family was going to survive, the way that my
Okay.
marriage was going to survive,
Okay.
and my relationship with my kids. But at the
Uh,
same time, I couldn't grieve properly and deal with Alex Jones and the conspiracists. So I was always split in two, right?
okay.
And over time, that created a very severe disconnection within myself. And
Okay.
I followed coping patterns that I had developed even as a kid from childhood trauma. And so writing for me turned out 5 years after the shooting, I just started writing about grief and my own experience, my own feelings. And it was just a healing process.
Okay.
And that eventually snowballed and grew into what ended up becoming the book. And so
Okay.
it's funny when you're not the first person to say that, like, how did you get the strength to do this? And it was just more, no one was actually ever supposed to know about this. But the more that I ended up, when I started sharing some of these things with people, I saw that they opened up too,
Mhm.
and they were able to connect with me, and I was able to connect with them, even though our stories and experiences are different. And I sensed there's a lot of people that suffer silently, and there's a lot of people that are going through hard things that need to connect to healing and they need to connect to something. And this book ended up becoming a testament to that. It's a way for me to share my story and what I've been through, and also hopefully connect with other people so that they can connect with their own selves and their own story.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about about your book. How is it done? Does it start with that day or what?
Yeah, it actually initially starts with my wife and I visiting the memorial site. 10 years after the shooting, the Sandy Hook Memorial was opened up
Okay.
and just being able to just reminisce about everything that we had been through. And that was right before the trial started. And so it goes back that the trial is like the backbone of the book. It has a good beginning, middle, end,
Mhm.
but it's highlighting a lot of just how much this campaign of disinformation, this campaign of hatred and stuff like that, how much it actually impacted our grieving process and what it stole away from us. And when I talk about reclaiming the truth about Sandy Hook, I gave up a lot of my power to people like Alex Jones because of the fear that I had developed about these people, right? And in
Yeah.
doing so, I allowed them to tarnish Emily's memory and come after my family. And I thought what I was doing was protecting my family, and I realized that I wasn't, and that
Okay.
in order to protect Emilie and my family, I needed to stand up. And so it's my process of coming to terms with that and joining the trial and what that process did for my healing. So that's really what it's about. The trial is a good um, pathway to
Okay.
hit on all these points about healing and my process for me.
I have to say, you certainly took back your power.
It was a surreal experience to be able to have something like this. I know that this is a unique experience. Not a lot of people that suffer from trauma and abuse and addiction and neglect go through something so publicly that they can use as a way to jumpstart their healing and take back that narrative. But it was something that I was able to do, and it really was just the start of the process. It's something that I'm still continuing today, and even everything I had to go through before I joined the trial, I had to overcome a lot of hurdles and overcome a lot of my own insecurities and fears just to join the lawsuit. And so it's been an ongoing process.
You had to overcome your own fears in order to join the lawsuit. Fears of retaliation or what? What fears?
Yeah, retaliation for one. That was one of the biggest ones on my mind. But again, I'd suffered a lot of childhood abuse growing up. And
Yeah.
so
I,
I
I,
developed a lot of shame-based coping strategies. And so even just giving myself permission that what I was going through was legitimate and what I was feeling was legitimate and that I needed to use my voice and speak up. That wasn't something that I did as a child. And so those things stick with you into your adulthood and they don't serve you well as an adult as they did when you were a kid. And so overcoming those kinds of things. That took a lot of work for me to do that.
I'm sure it did, especially since you had that experience as a kid. I read a little bit about it. Can you share just a bit about what happened to you?
Sure. Yeah. When I was young, was sexually abused by a family friend of ours, but he was also our Mormon bishop. I grew up in the
Oh,
Mormon faith,
oh,
and
gee.
he was our religious spiritual leader, and he was also a good family friend of ours. And I didn't know it at the time until things actually came out, but he had also abused my siblings, my brothers. And so that trauma just in my own personal life, but then how it impacted my family and altered the way that my development and growing up and how I viewed myself. So that started when I was really young and didn't have ways to deal with it at the time, right?
Sure.
So you do go into survival mode and you do the best that you can. And those survival tactics served me really well at that time to be able to get through it. But when you incorporate those in your adolescent years and in your adulthood, they don't work the same way. And so your life can continue being a mess.
Yeah, then this experience, the shooting, Sandy Hook shooting happened, and you lost your daughter. And so now you've suffered a second time, only in an even worse way. That just had to be horrific. What kind of an impact has that had on your family? Did it affect your relationship with your wife? You have other kids, right?
Correct. Yeah. Emily had two younger sisters.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
no, it definitely does. And with those shame-based kind of insecurities I had, I was always like, for me personally, in relation to my family, what kind of husband would my wife have gotten had we not gone through this? What kind of a dad would my Emily sisters be receiving right now if I didn't go through this, right?
Mm.
So it definitely does. Grief is a funny thing. A lot of people, and myself included, really afraid of grief and really don't want to engage with that process.
Sure. Yeah.
But it also is a beautiful thing, and it does bring a lot of healing, and it can bring connection, and it can heal wounds that don't have anything to do with the traumatic event. Like
Okay.
me working through my grief process
Hmm.
opened me up to expressing emotion and trying to understand myself, which eventually led me back to processing my childhood trauma. So
Wow.
it's a weird sense that Emily was 6 when she died, and processing her death led me back to my 6-year-old self to find healing. So grief can be hard and dark and painful, and it can be beautiful and healing as well.
So if Emily was alive today, she'd be able to vote.
Yeah, she would have turned 18 in May and graduated.
Incredible. And we're
Yeah.
recording this on election day, so it's just I don't know, appropriate, I think. Just been wondering what how did you cope with all the attention and the media jumping into your life and having to deal with all of that while you were trying to grieve and trying to support your wife and your other kids? I don't
Yeah.
know. How did you do that?
I don't know either. And again, people give me a lot of credit, like you're so strong, and I didn't have a choice. These were things that were thrown at us, and I did my best to manage it. I made so many mistakes. I try to be clear and accurate in the book about the trial and error and the mistakes and stuff that I made along the way. But grief is complicated enough as it is.
Sure.
And then you have these layers of, because of the event and because of the nature in which Emily was killed, there is a
Yeah.
lot of attention, good and bad.
Yeah.
We received a tremendous amount of love and support. And so I'm not trying to make it sound like there's so many more loving, caring people in the world that genuinely don't like to watch people suffer. And then there's people
Yeah.
who like to inflict it.
Yeah.
So all those layers definitely impact it. But that's why when I mention, I don't throw the word evil out lightly, but when I
Hmm.
mention what Alex Jones did in these moments to defile an innocent 6-year-old girl who had nothing to do with anything except for just bringing joy and happiness to the people that got to know her,
Right.
and to involve her and her family in this malicious lie that to stoke other people's fears and to do it for gain. How he inflicted our grief process. That's an evil thing to do. And he doesn't look at it that way. He doesn't realize, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do this. But the nature of what he does and the impact that it has is definitely evil. And those lies and stuff that he perpetuates and gets people to believe and follow, it definitely complicates an already traumatic process for sure.
Absolutely. Do you think that justice has been done?
in a sense, it's hard to depends on what your expectation is or how you
Yeah.
define justice in a sense like this.
Yeah.
And at present, Alex Jones is still able to do what he does. We got this historic verdict in the defamation case, $965 million in
Mhm.
damages, and then tacked on a couple hundred more millions of dollars in punitive damages.
Right.
So you get a verdict like that, and a lot of people will say that's the win. But for
Right.
me, the win was, like I talked about, the process that I had to go through, the way that I was able to grow and heal as a person by
Mhm.
going through this,
Mhm.
and not just defend Emilie's name and her memory, but also show my other daughters that I'm willing to fight for them. That for me is the win, and that's what I was able to take away from it. So I don't know how to define justice in this, right? It's
Well, I know
kind of
one
a hard
thing.
one.
I know one thing. You're a good dad. That's clear. Now, tell me this. Do you think you'll ever see any of that money? What is it? Almost over $1 billion, right? Altogether.
Yeah, there was two lawsuits that were filed from groups of families that, and some families did it in Texas. I was part of the group in Connecticut, and
Yeah.
so all in all, it was close to $1.5 billion. And no, I'm not seeing much of that. So
Are you spending that money?
no, not at all. And things are still in. He's appealed these things, and
Right.
he filed
Right.
bankruptcy. So
Yeah.
where we're at in the bankruptcy is on Friday the 8th. So this will already have happened by the time I guess this airs, but his business InfoWars is going up for auction. The bankruptcy judge ruled that his debts are non-dischargeable, so he can't use bankruptcy to get out of it. So he's on
Okay.
the hook for the full amount. He doesn't have that kind of, he has a lot of money, but he doesn't have that kind of money.
Sure.
So again, another form of justice is search for these things. And this is the only avenue I have, right, in pursuit of justice is to
Mhm.
hold somebody accountable if they're not
Yeah.
willing to be accountable to themselves.
Yeah.
So the fact that Jones has spent 30 years building this brand and himself and all these things that he was able to gain and all the power and influence that he's been able to have is at this moment crumbling because he loved his lies more than he loved the truth. And his business is gonna go up for auction. It's gonna get sold off by parts. There's he's lost everything. And that goes to show that something that I've been attributing into my own life through things that I'm going through is this thought of every lie that we tell incurs a debt to the truth. And
Okay.
sooner or later, that debt will be paid.
Okay.
And it's something I'm experiencing in my life and in my relationships right now. And it's just a really poignant saying and thing that I believe in. And Alex Jones is also facing the same thing.
Well, that was well said. What do you think needs to be done to protect our kids in school from similar tragedies?
There's a lot. There's not a lot of people will jump on the one answer that they believe in. So Emily's best friend, her name was Josephine Gay. We called her
Yeah.
Joey. She was killed alongside Emilie in that classroom. But Alyssa and Joey's mom, Michelle, they started a school safety nonprofit called Safe and Sound Schools. And
Okay.
so they they have been spending their time. Alyssa's stepped away from the organization over the last few years, but they talk about all the ways that we can not just protect our kids, but what the resources that schools can get, programs that are involved. And so it's a multifactorial thing, and it depends on where you are and where you live. And so I don't have a clear answer for you.
Okay. All right. All right. Listen, the name of the book again is A Father's Fight Taking on Alex Jones and Reclaiming the Truth About Sandy Hook. So I hope you guys check it out. This man is a strong man. I don't know how many people could do and deal with things the way he has. I admire Robbie very much. Robbie, thank you
Appreciate it.
so much for being with us. I appreciate you sharing your story and being so open, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I hope
Thanks for
people
the
can,
opportunity.
yeah, I hope people can get some value from this discussion.
Appreciate it. My pleasure.
Well, guys, in a twist of fate, shortly after we concluded our interview with Robbie, it was announced that The Onion, the satirical website The Onion, had won InfoWars in a bankruptcy auction and is going to close InfoWars and rebuild the website featuring well known internet humor writers and content creators. So, probably the most hated thing that Alex Jones could ever want would be for the Onion to be taking over his InfoWars property. Well, isn't that just too bad? Anyway, here's what Here's what Robbie had to say about that. Hey, Robbie, what's your reaction to The Onion being awarded the InfoWars platform?
Oh my gosh, I'm over the moon. This is a huge win. The Connecticut plaintiffs had to work really hard. We were really worried about Jones and or his allies being able to essentially buy InfoWars and give it back to him. And the fact that we needed to sacrifice some money that would have came to us to
Yeah.
ensure that the Onion's bid was profitable enough to be accepted. It's a huge win, and we fought really hard for it.
So you guys worked with the folks from The Onion to make this all happen?
In a sense, I wasn't. We couldn't necessarily like get involved, but there was an option for us to take less money if we needed to ensure that if a bid was less than like a Jones ally, if a Jones ally had a higher bid, and we
Uh,
wanted the trustee to accept a lower bid, that we had to all agree to accept less money, and that's what we did, and that's what we accomplished.
oh, I see. Okay. All right. So do you think you'll actually end up getting some money out of this deal now?
Much like Reagan trickle down economics, there'll be some pennies that come my way at some point after everybody gets their cut out of it. But and like we talked about, if my motivation was to retire early or get a vacation home, then I would be really disappointed. But I'm the farthest away from disappointed right now. I'm really excited.
That's great. How do you respond to Jones, who said it was an attack on free speech, that the deep state is completely out of control? What'd you say about that?
Oh, he is a professional victim, right? And anybody that's been in therapy, they learn about the drama triangle,
Yeah,
and it's crazy how he has a monopoly on the whole block.
right.
So of course he's going to say those things because that's how he gets his base riled up, and that's what they want to hear, and they want to stand by their profit, so to speak. And it's not true. And when you've been involved with Jones as long as we have been, you know that he knows it's not true, but he knows how to work it.
Okay. Ben Collins of the Onion's parent company told the AP that they thought it would be a funny joke if they bought InfoWars. What do you think? Do you think it's a joke?
Oh, I think he's dead serious. I think it is really funny. He's being very truthful. And the
Oh,
irony of this, you have a truth spectrum, and Alex Jones sits onto the far right where truth isn't even reaching out there. And then you have that being able taken over by satire, which has nothing to do with the truth either. This is great. And then you have my book in the middle of it where truth is what I'm trying to reclaim. And so
it's true.
covering all our bases here.
All right. So you would say it's poetic justice, right?
Oh, absolutely. I don't even think Dickens could have authored something as well as this.
It's got to piss Jones off no end. He's got to despise the Onion, huh?
Oh, he did. He was live streaming this morning before everything got taken away from him, and that's exactly what he was saying. And yep, he still will proclaim that he's under attack, and this was all a conspiracy against him. But this was just people not willing to back down to whatever it is that he does, and
Yeah.
stayed steadfast and made it happen.
What do you think the message is to people who still support this guy?
Yeah, again, I mentioned earlier, I consider Jones's followers victims of Alex Jones as well. And so I hope that him being deplatformed, and he says he's going to reestablish himself, and I have no doubt that he's going to try and do that. But
Mhm.
hopefully there's in that separation, you if you're so engaged in something that you forget where up is, and you
Yeah.
get some time away from it and you can recenter yourself. Hopefully there's some people that realize that they've been duped and they can get away from it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, this has been a great day. I've been doing all these other live interviews with CNN, and they have a hard. I have to remind them that I wrote a book.
Okay.
But I do have a website that is live now. It's
Oh,
Robbie
good.
Parker. Yeah, RobbieParker.net, Robbie with an
Okay.
IE. And
Okay.
so you can go there, you can figure out how to contact me and reach me and buy the book if you want.
Okay. That's great. Do you dialogue with people who reach out to you that way?
We'll see.
Yeah.
I am curious to see how this works this time. Yeah.
Hopefully you'll have positive responses, not threatening responses like before, right?
No, totally. And hopefully this creates opportunities for me to be able to continue this message and creates opportunities for other people to connect with it.
Good. Okay. All right,
Great.
Robbie, congratulations. I'm really happy for you. I was thrilled when I saw the news online today.
No, I'm glad it worked out.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and you found it interesting and informative. Please visit on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that focus on progressive politics and the important social issues of our time. Now, our interview shows stream on Mondays with special episodes on Thursdays. And follow us on social media. Facebook at Bob Gaddy and the Lean to the Left podcast. Now, it's two. Bob Gaddy is one Facebook page, and the Lean to the Left podcast is a second Facebook page. Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at Lean to the Left 1, TikTok at Lean to the Left, LinkedIn at Bob Gaddy, and YouTube at Lean to the Left. Now, I hope you'll support Lean to the Left as well so we can keep things going. Just click on the Donate tab at the top of the leantotheleft.net homepage and contribute by buying me a cup of coffee. That'll really help and would be much, much, much appreciated. Now, this is Bob Gaddy signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.